Hey everybody, welcome back to Ink Play Quest. Today, we are going to be reviewing the top 40 cards coming in Archazia's Island for Cube. The set releases in just a couple weeks, and I'm very excited for these new cards, including very cool dual ink cards, which should be just powerful on their own for a limited environment where we don't care about ink color restrictions like Cube. So I'm going to be walking through my 40 cards I'm most excited about for Cube in ink curve order. So starting with the 1-drops, going up to the 6 and overs, and then talking about some actions at the end. So first off, we have Merlin, Clairvoyant. He is a 1-cost inkable 0/1, and whenever this character quests, name a card, then reveal the top card of your deck. If it's the name card, put it into your inkwell face down and exert it, otherwise put it on top of your deck. So this is an interesting top deck manipulation type matters card, like the Bruno Evasive that gives you lore off the top. Obviously, you need a little bit of support to make this work, but if you proc this once or twice, just for a 1-cost inkable, getting 1 or 2 extra ink in your first few turns is very powerful. So this is an interesting support card for that kind of archetype. Obviously not supported in every cube, but very, very low cost for this interesting upside effect. So putting him in. Monsieur Dark. He is a 1-cost inkable 1/2, and whenever this character quests, you may banish a chosen item of yours to draw a card. So this is like the mini Hiram Flavorsham. Really only good if you have a Popsicle or a Fortisphere type effect where you get value off of the item coming in. But if you play this on turn 1, Popsicle on turn 2, draw a card, quest, banish the Popsicle, draw another card, you're up a card, so you replaced the Popsicle with the Popsicle's effect, and then you get a card draw for this effect. So I think it's totally reasonable. Minor upside effect for a 1-cost character. Pretty interesting in a item-heavy deck, like when you want to draft the deck around Hiram. Cool effect. You'll notice that these 1-cost characters are obviously have a lot weaker of an effect than some of the very strong characters, but in a cube deck, you want to be drafting a lot of characters across your ink curve. So we'll see most of our review cards concentrated in the 2 to 4 or 5 ink. But I wanted to mention a few 1s and a few really big characters as we go along. Anyway, so here is Dawson, Puzzling Sleuth, 1-cost uninkable 1/2, the quest for 1. Once during your turn, whenever you put a card into your inkwell, look at the top card of your deck. You may put it on either the top or bottom of your deck. So, unlike the Merlin at the beginning, this is not getting you any value off of the card that you see, but, well, you get a little bit of value because you get this scry effect where you get to either bottom the card if you don't want it or keep it on top if you do. You don't even need to quest with this guy. You can just sort of treat him as a 1-cost item that has minor questing upside if you want. But I think this is a totally reasonable effect for 1 ink. And finally, the 1s. We have Mulan, Disguised Soldier, 1-cost inkable 2/1, that quest for 1, and whenever you play this character, you may draw a card, then choose and discard a card. So we've seen this effect at 1 ink on the Simba from set 1. This sort of looting effect, drawing and discarding, is quite powerful. You get to sort of see extra cards, get rid of the ones you don't need, and I think any small Mulan with upside is worth it because she has a very good Floodborn target at 5 ink in the Archer. I forget what her subtext is, but she's very powerful. And then there's another Floodborn Mulan in this set that I think is quite good as well. So little Mulans are already good. This one's pretty good for 1 ink. Next up with the 2-cost characters, we have the Troubadour, Musical Narrator. 2-cost inkable 1/3 that quests for 1. It has Resist +1 and Singer 4. A lot of these sort of quote-unquote French vanilla dual ink cards have 2 keyword abilities, but I think these are pretty interesting ways of filling in the ink curve. This one compares to the 2-cost Ursula in Amber, but it has Resist instead of just an extra willpower. And Singer 4 is pretty nice it's quite nice on a 2-cost character. You get to sing How Far I'll Go or Along Came Zeus pretty early, or just Friends on the Other Side, or any of the good 3-cost songs. I think this is a totally reasonable stat line for 2 ink. Next up, Penny, Bolt's Person, 2-cost inkable 1/2 that quests for 2. When you play this character, you may remove up to 2 damage from chosen character, and they gain Resist +1 until the start of your next turn. So, You can use this offensively, where you choose a character, give them resist, and then they can challenge down a character. Or you can challenge down something first with your 1-cost character and then remove damage from them. Or you can kind of do a combination of both. Say you play like the 1-cost Mulan that enters damaged, but if you don't have the Rapunzel or other ways to remove damage and draw, you can use this to remove damage and then have a strong challenging character from your 1-cost spot. I think this is a pretty interesting concept. We've seen a lot of remove damage. We've seen giving resist. This combines them pretty well in a decent body as well. So interesting card. All right, next up we have Raja Ghostly Tiger, 2-cost inkable 3/3 that quests for 1, and it has the new keyword ability of Vanish. When an opponent chooses this character for an action, banish them. So Vanish we see on a few characters in the set. It's the sort of prototypical keyword for illusion characters. This is a way to give this overstated character a downside. So any action that chooses this character banishes it. So if you exert it or if you remove damage from it, it just goes away. When an opponent does that, sorry. You can still choose your own characters with Vanish. I think this is going to be pretty strong in a limited environment where there's only one of every action anyway, so there already aren't a ton of the same kind of action running around, and I think that there aren't enough good actions and songs that choose but do not already banish for Vanish to be enough of a downside to make this bad. I think a 2-cost is basically almost always just going to be a 2-cost inkable 3/3 that quests for 1, which I think is very good. We've seen that on Snake and other characters. So yeah, this is going to be a slam dunk include for now. All right, Diablo Spiteful Raven, 2-cost inkable 1/2 that quests for 1, and in the vein of these dual ink characters, it has 2 keywords, both evasive and challenger +2. So this is similar to some of the 2-cost 3/2 quasi-evasive characters, I'll call them. So characters that are only evasive during your turn, but this is evasive all the time. So this is sort of better in some ways and worse in other ways, but offensively, this can answer opposing evasive characters, or it can just be a sort of passive evasive questing threat. I think it's pretty good. There's obviously a Floodborn Diablo that is a problem, so any small Diablos, are kind of like Mulan, are going to be pretty good on their own, so this, I think, is a pretty easy include. All right, we have Baymax Low Battery, 2-cost inkable 3/2 that quests for 2, and this character enters play exerted. So this is kind of like the, I think it's a Sleepy from set 2, but it just has its stats flopped. It's a 3/2 instead of a 2/3, and it's also like the Shenzi, I think it's the Hyena. That's an uninkable 3/2 that quests for 2. I think this is going to be a pretty good sort of aggressive early character that can trade pretty favorably if you put it down, and then you're forcing your opponent to obviously don't play this into like their 1-cost Rafiki or Captain Hook, but this is almost always going to be a 1-for-1 forcing your opponent to get rid of it. Totally fine inkable 2-cost. Donald Duck Lively Pirate, 2-cost uninkable 1/1 that quests for 2. Whenever this character is challenged, you may return an action card that isn't a song from your discard to your hand. So I think this is the kind of card that is going to get better over time. I think it's already decent because we have cards like Develop Your Brain, which is a perfectly reasonable, cheap action that gives you value on turn 1. You can play this on turn 2, and then on turn 3, you can either play another action that's not a song, or you can just quest out with Donald, and then you can get Develop Your Brain back later. Obviously, you want this in a deck that has, you know, a critical mass of actions that aren't songs. Most of the best actions are songs, but we'll see a few at the end of this review that are not songs. Pretty interesting card. I think, you know, if we get like a really good 3-cost action that isn't a song, sort of like Smash, but Smash is just fine. I think if we get something like a Smash, either a good removal or good card draw effect, this is going to be a slam dunk include. So I like him for now. All right, Helga Sinclair Tough as Nails, 2-cost uninkable 0/4 that quests for 1. She has Challenger +3, and during your turn, this character gains Evasive. I think this is sort of the premier anti-evasive character that we have so far. So this compares interestingly to the 3/2s that gain evasive during your turn, Cruella and Jafar. I forget what the other one. Yeah, it's a Jafar, I think. But she has 4 willpower, so she'll survive a lot more challenges. She is uninkable, obviously, and since it's a challenger ability, she has 0 strength defensively. But this takes out basically any evasive that you're worried about and lives to tell the tale. So I think this is a pretty cool. Obviously, uninkable is not great, but cheap uninkables are better than expensive uninkables. So I think Helga Sinclair is worth including. All right, here's a really cool one. Mickey Mouse Inspirational Warrior. 2-cost uninkable 1/1 that quests for 1, so bad stats. But during your turn, whenever the character banishes another character in a challenge, you may play a character for free. Any character. It can be a 10-cost character. It can be a 3-cost character. So obviously you want to pair this with 2 things. Ways to give it more strength, so it has an easier time banishing a character in a challenge. And you want to pair it with obviously huge characters that can be cheated into play as early as turn 3 with this guy. I'm thinking things like Lumiere or any of the items that give a character extra strength, or some of the good items that give you extra challenger and then card draw, and so those are already good on their own, medallion weights, etc. But with this kind of character, it will give you extra value, because if this thing can challenge down their 1 or 2 cost character and banish it, and you get like a 10 drop on turn 3, that's obviously the dream. It also forces your opponent to play really defensively and not quest their characters if you're threatening to drop a Chernabog or Goofy Knight for a Day or whatever on turn 3. I think this is a really, really interesting design space. Does not need to live through the challenge. 2-cost uninkable, pretty low cost. I love this card. I am excited to try him out. All right, on to the 3s. Perla, Nimble Seamstress, 3-cost inkable 3/2 that quests for 1 with evasive and support. So 3/2 is already a pretty decent stat line for an evasive. It challenges and survives, or it challenges pretty favorably and sort of banishes things that try to challenge it. But I think support is an interesting mechanic that I don't think about. I don't think about enough. But I think it can be pretty strong. And on this evasive body, this is just going to be kind of an annoying questing threat that it will, you want to quest with this basically every turn, and they need to commit resources to deal with it, or deal with your other characters that are gaining 3 strength from the support keyword. So I think this is just a totally fine, another of these dual keyword characters from the dual ink cards. So pretty cool design here. Giant Cobra. Ghostly Serpent, 3-cost inkable 4/4 that quests for 1. It has Vanish, and whenever you play this character, you may choose and discard a card to gain 2 lore. So even without the discard gain 2 line, this is a perfectly reasonable card. 3-cost 4/4 with minor downside of Vanish. I think people are worried about this constructed. I think it's quite good. I think it'll be fun and limited. And again, these Vanish cards I think are pretty good. At least now when we don't have a critical mass of actions that can deal with them efficiently. So, cool card. All right, Bucky, he's back. 3-cost inkable 3/2 that quests for 1. Bucky Nutty Rascal is his keyword, or his subtext. Pop. When this character is banished in a challenge, you may draw a card. So this is like the 2-cost Amethyst Kuzco, except he has 3 strength and not 1 strength. So I think this is actually going to be a 2-for-1 a good amount of the time. 3 strength is is about where you want to be on a character that wants to be challenged, and you'll see another one in just a second. But you really need to have a chonky character to be able to answer Bucky without also losing your challenging character. So, hey, if you just get a inkable 3/2 that 2-for-1s, that is a totally reasonable character. I already almost put Kuzco in every deck that I draft him in. And this is, I think, just a little bit better. All right, Kenai, Magical Bear, 3-cost inkable 1/4 that quests for 1. He has Challenger +2, and during your turn, when this character is banished in a challenge, return this card to your hand and gain 1 lore. So this is an interesting take on this sort of recursive character only. It's during your turn, so you have to be the one challenging and getting banished. So you have to find something that deals either 4 damage, or you need to do this across a couple turns. So that's a little bit of a setup cost, but a recursive 3-cost inkable character that gains you lore when it comes back, I think that's a pretty powerful effect. You're obviously you're gonna want to deploy him in situations where you can get that recursion going, but I think it's a quite an interesting design space. Excited to include this, and it's just inkable. So like, inkable cards have so little downside in Lorcana, obviously because of the game's rules, and this is just a pretty cool take on this kind of recursive character. All right, here is sort of what I was alluding to earlier when we were talking about Bucky. Anastasia, Bossy Stepsister, 3-cost, inkable 3/1, that quests for 2. So pretty fragile, but whenever this character is challenged, the challenging player chooses and discards a card. So similar to Merfolk and that ilk of Emerald discard stuff. But this has 3 strength. So again, a lot of the time you're going to banish the challenging character, or at least make your opponent think pretty hard about crashing a character into Anastasia and having to lose their challenger and discard a card from their hand. So quite a cool card. Definitely going to include this. There are a lot of good 3-cost characters in Emerald, but I think this is an interesting. It slots in pretty well, I think. All right, here is Denahi Impatient Hunter, 3-cost inkable 3/2. That does not quest for anything because he has Reckless and Resist +2. But this is just like one of the best pure challenging cards that we've seen, I think, because he is most likely going to survive his first challenge. I mean, they would have to put something down and exerted with 4 strength to one-shot him. And then if you have something on turns 3 and 4 with 4 strength, it's almost always gonna get gotten by a 3 strength challenger. So almost always gonna be a 1-for-1. Probably can challenge 2-for-1. I think Reckless is pretty interesting. It's an interesting design space that Lorcana has, where these characters aren't really contributing to your winning the game in terms of lore, but board control is so important in Lorcana, and I love these kinds of challenge focused characters, and there are a lot of them, especially in this Ruby Steel dual ink pairing, and I think the Challenge Matters deck is pretty cool in Cube. Speaking of Ruby Steel, Li Shang, newly promoted, 3-cost uninkable 2/3 that quests for 1, and this character can challenge ready characters, and while this character has damage, he gets +2 strength. Again, this very specific Challenge Matters type character. I love characters that can challenge ready characters. That presents such a weird dilemma for your opponent. It's a hero, really relevant type line, and then if you could just take out something that they're trying to keep defensively, totally worth. And here's the big boogeyman of Sapphire, one of the big boogeymen of Sapphire from this set, Bell, Apprentice Inventor, 3-cost inkable 3/3 that quests for 1, and during your turn, you may banish a chosen item of yours to play this character for free. So, there's a few good 1-cost items, right? Popsicle, Fortisphere, you get those down early. You can banish them on turn 1 and have a turn 1 3/3 that quests for 1. That's totally doable in Cube. Obviously a little bit more doable in Constructed when you can have 4 Popsicle, 4 Fortisphere. But hey, if you draft both of those cards, they're both inkable. Popsicle and Bell are both inkable. Just include them. It's probably going to be worth it. I'm going to see how many times I can get a turn 1 Bell in Cube and just go from there. I mean, the downside is so low, right? This is just a cool card. All right, on to the 4 costs. Snow White, Fairest in the Land, 4-cost inkable 2/2 that quests for 2, and this character can't be challenged. Very cool text. There aren't very many cards that have this kind of text on them, and I think this may be the only unconditional one. So your opponents have to answer this in a different way. Obviously, 4-cost 2/2 the quest for 2 is way understated, but if you just get this down on turn 4, just keep questing with it, that's going to be super annoying to deal with, and it feels pretty bad to waste removal on a card like this. I mean, the only thing that answers these kinds of cards pretty well is Storm Rage On, where you get to draw a card and get rid of this for basically nothing. But barring that, I mean, this is a totally reasonable card. Probably going to be a real problem in Limited. Iago, Giant Spectral Parrot, 4-cost inkable 4/6, a quest for 1. He has Evasive and Vanish. This is just a big chunker, and like I've said with the Vanish keyword several times, overstated with pretty little downside. 4/6 on a 4-cost is just, that's going to be super annoying. This, I said earlier that I think she was Calhoun. Was that a Calhoun, the 2-cost uninkable evasive? This may be the best anti-evasive character. I mean, 4/6 is going to survive basically anything and take out basically any relevant evasive, so pretty cool card. Shere Khan, Infamous Tiger, 4-cost uninkable 4/4 that quests for 4. And then when you play this character, discard your hand. 4 lore pips on a 4-cost character. That's pretty cool. I think in like an aggro deck that plays 1 extra character by turn 4. So like a character on 1, a character on 2, 2 characters on 3, and this on 4 on the top end. This is just going to be so overwhelming to deal with. And it's a 4/4, so it survives most common removal. It survives through Madame Medusa. This is just... You want to only be discarding like 1 card with this. Obviously, if you play this on turn 4 on the draw, when you haven't played a character on every turn, you're discarding like 3 cards with this. It's going to feel really bad. But sometimes they're just not going to be able to beat a 4-quester on turn 4. So really cool design space. Synergizes pretty well with like some of the discard recursion also. Perdita and some of the new characters. So super cool design space. Love it. Excited to see how this plays in Cube. Fidget, Sneaky Bat, 4-cost inkable 2/3 that quests for 2. This is the Emerald Ruby dual ink character. It has evasive, and whenever this character quests, another chosen character of yours gains evasive till the start of your next turn. Pretty cool. This is gonna be good in like an aggro build with fragile characters that are questing for a lot, that you just want to give them like 1 more extra turn of questing. It's a little weird where that effect is not going to come into play until turn 5, probably. I guess turn 4 if you have an extra ink in your inkwell, but so that's not super great. If it gave evasive until the start of your next turn on play, this card would be insane, but I think it's worth checking out. Aggro is pretty good in Limited. I think aggro is pretty good in Cube, actually. So we'll see how this card plays out. Beagle Boys, Small Time Crooks. This is a 4-cost inkable 3/3 that quests for 2, and it is Ruby Sapphire dual ink. When this character quests, chosen character of yours gains rush and resist +1 this turn. So I think this works best on play this on 4, quest on turn 5, or play another relevant character on turn 5 that gets you some value from challenging, and then quest with Beagle Boys, challenge with the 5-drop. I'm thinking like Robin Hood, Champion of Sherwood, or something else like that. And then it won't take as much damage with the resist, and it'll get the challenge right away. I like these effects that sort of give you sort of the element of surprise when you're giving your unknown character an extra ability. Pretty cool card. I don't know what these guys are from, but they're cool. They're cute. And then we have Gone to Experienced Enforcer, another card that I've seen some discourse about online. 4-cost uninkable 2/4 that quests for 1. When you play this character, characters can't exert to sing songs until the start of your next turn. So punishes some options to deal with it. And then each player plays 2 ink more to play actions or items. So you're obviously going to want to play this in a very character-heavy deck where you're not having to pay that extra tax. Or you can just have, a couple songs in there. But I think this is pretty cool. We haven't really seen this taxing element in Lorcana yet. This is obviously a pretty common element of other card games like Magic the Gathering, but in Lorcana, we'll see how this plays out. Interested to see how he plays, especially in a cube environment that's not as action or item heavy, but still think this could be pretty good. Okay, on to the 5s. We have Isabella Madrigal, In the Moment. 5-cost uninkable 3/3 that quests for 4. I think they they've introduced a lot of 4 questers in this, or relevant 4 questers in this set that I think are pretty interesting. Whenever one of your characters sings a song, this character can't be challenged until the start of your next turn. So I feel like this is kind of just one of the win the game type cards. You play around 5, quest on 6, sing a song, a relevant song on turn 6, get some value from the song, and then she can't be challenged. I mean, if you give her reward, also that's crazy. But getting like 8 lore off of her before your opponents can challenge seems crazy. Obviously, 5 cost uninkable is a little bit of a cost, but 3/3 quest for 4 is already a pretty good stat line, so cool card. Lady, Miss Park Avenue, 5 cost uninkable 4/4 that quests for 2. She has shift 3, she's Floodborn. Amber Emerald Dual Ink. When you play this character, you may return up to 2 cards with cost 2 or less, each from your discard to your hand. So this is going to be best in a aggressive, low-cost character shell where say you are questing early with, Lilo's, Maleficence, those kinds of characters. They get banished, and then you get to get them back on turn 3 if you're lucky, but that requires probably a morph. I don't think I saw any other ladies that are quite good enough at low costs. Or on turn 5 is also totally reasonable. If you basically play this on turn 5, draw 2, that's pretty good. So interesting card, best in an aggro shell. Kuzco, Temporary Whale. This card, it was unassuming at first, but I think it has a potential to be kind of broken. 5 cost uninkable 1/4, quest for 2. Once during your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, you may return chosen character, item, or location with cost 2 or less to their player's hand. Then that player draws a card. So you can use it offensively. You're probably not going to. You want to use it on yourself, I think, to get extra value off of things that give you value when you play them. So, I mean, think about if you just have a popsicle. You play that popsicle, draw a card. Play Kuzco, ink into your inkwell, return popsicle to your hand. You draw a card from Kuzco's effects, and then you can replay the popsicle to draw another card. That seems kind of good, and you can do it every single turn. Yeah, I think this will be a nice value engine. It does cost 5, so it's coming down a little later in the game, but I think in a sort of longer game, the incremental value this gets you every turn could be quite good. Queen of Hearts, Unpredictable Bully, 5 cost uninkable 2/6 that quests for 2 and is Floodborn with shift 3. Whenever another character is played, put a damage counter on them. So every character basically enters play with a damage counter on them. This is not damage, so it gets around resist, and it affects both you and your opponent. But that means they can't play small stuff. You can't either, but you can get value, especially if you have a damage moving type of deck, which has not really been supported to the best, to the maximum yet. But I think with these kinds of effects that give you value against your opponent, and then if you're using it defensively as well, are very cool. I try to include in review cards that are maybe a little underpowered and constructed, but when you build around them can be really interesting. And I just like cards that enable these like weird archetypes that cube. Sometimes your weird cube deck can just like totally go off and take your opponent by surprise. So I like these kinds of unique mechanics, especially in cube. Mushu, Majestic Dragon. Speaking of archetypes I love in cube, how about more Challenge Matters support? 5 cost inkable 4/4 that quest for 1. Whenever one of your characters challenges, they gain resist +2 during that challenge. And during your turn, whenever one of your characters banishes another character in a challenge, gain 2 lore. It seems really good, especially with characters that already gain you lore when they challenge and or banish. I'm thinking Super Goof, I'm thinking Champion of Sherwood, I'm thinking Calhoun. I mean, there's a lot of good characters already that already gain you value when they challenge, and this just adds to that, and it gives them resist +2. I feel like the Ruby Steel Dual Ink cards seem really sweet for cube. So yeah, and I'm glad that we got Mushu finally in Lorcana. Also, it needs to be said. Bagheera, Guardian Jaguar. 5 cost, inkable, 4/3, the quest for 2 with Bodyguard. And during an opponent's turn, when this character is banished, deal 2 damage to each opposing character. This is grab your sword on a Bodyguard. This card seems nuts. It seems overstated for that kind of effect. So it's a Bodyguard with 4 strength, so it's already probably going to banish something. And then it's going to deal damage to all your other opponent's cards. Obviously, your opponent can kind of play around it by just not worrying about this, because it's not when it's banished all the time. It's just during your opponent's turn. So they can just kind of ignore him, but then he's questing for 2, and then you can, protect your other aggressive questers. This is going to be pretty good, I think, in like an aggressive deck, where he is sort of the final defensive piece, where if you get him and a high quester down, your opponent needs to answer him, but if you banish Bagheera, he's going to deal a bunch of damage to your opponent. I think this is a really cool card and probably pretty strong. All right, on to the 6 and over characters. Here we have Tramp, Street Smart Dog, 7 cost, inkable, 2/6, the quest for 2. For each character you have in play, you may pay 1 less to play this character, which means you can play him on turn 4 if you have a 1, 2, and 3 cost character out. And so he's obviously, for 7, this is not enough, right? A 2/6, the quest for 2 with another ability, but when you start playing this for 4 or 3, this is going to be pretty crazy. And his second ability also ties into that. So when you play this character, you may draw a card for each other character you have in play, then choose and discard that many cards. So I think if you play him on turn 4 with 3 other characters in play, you draw 3, discard 3, and I think you'll have 2 cards left in your hand. So you'll get the 2 best out of 6 cards. I think that's pretty good. This kind of like mass looting can be quite powerful, and also synergizes with other cards that return stuff from discard to hand. A lot of these that I'm looking at that are 6 ink or more, I think have a lot of upside, but maybe need a little bit more support. But those are cool cards for Cube, so interesting card for sure. Hero Hamada, 7 cost, inkable, 4/6, the quest for 3. He's Floodborn with Shift 5. I think this is the Set Champs promo for Archazia's Island. And it has your Floodborn characters that have a card under them gain evasive and ward. So if you shift him in on top of another Hero Hamada or on top of Morph, he is a 4/6, the quest for 3 with evasive and ward, and it costs 5, plus a character that you had to shift him onto. But 4/6 quest for 3 evasive ward feels like the most powerful like statted character in the game. I know people are kind of down on this because I don't think this is going to be great and constructed, but if you just get him out as a 5 cost 4/6 quest for 3 evasive wards, I don't know how your opponent answers that. Could probably just win the game from there. So kind of like if you live the dream with getting him down on turn 5 or even turn 4, because you may have some ramp, pretty powerful. All right, Daisy Duck, multi-talented pirate, 8 cost, inkable, 6/5, the quest for 3. Once during your turn, whenever a card is put into your inkwell, chosen opponent chooses one of their characters and returns that card to their hand. I include this because if you get this down early from the 2 cost Mickey Mouse that we talked about earlier, or another card coming later, I think this has a chance to just sort of lock your opponent out of the game. If you get this down on turn 3, you may be able to get it down on turn 3 and then ink. You just need a way to give Mickey Mouse enough strength that doesn't require 3 ink on turn 3. But I think you can do it, and then you can just start returning characters to their hand every turn, and that's just like so oppressive. So playing this on turn 8, not so good. Playing this, cheating this into play early seems extremely good. We'll see. And I think this is our last character we're going to talk about is Mulan, Imperial General, 7 cost, inkable, 5/6, the quest for 2. She's Floodborn with Shift 5, and she is evasive. Whenever this character challenges another character, your other characters gain. This character can challenge ready characters this turn. So this is another pretty strong Floodborn Mulan that if you could find an opening for her to come in and challenge, doesn't even need to banish, although you probably will. But if she can just challenge something down, and then your other characters can sort of wipe your opponent's board, even if their characters are ready. Not as powerful as the Archer Mulan, I don't think, but quite a cool effect, giving your whole board challenge-ready characters. Also, the art is quite cool. All right, I'm going to talk about 4 actions. They're all interesting, and some of them have very high upside, but maybe some lower floors. This is my family 2-cost Uninkable Song. Gain 1 lore, draw a card. I think this is a pretty reasonable card, and I look at this and I immediately think, sing this with Ursula, the Seaver of all. Gain 2, draw 2. Seems great. I think this is just an interesting cantrip. But next up, we have a pretty insane looking card. Restoring the Crown, 6-cost Uninkable action, not a song. Exert all opposing characters. Whenever one of your characters banishes another character in a challenge, this turn gain 2 lore. This is awesome. This, if you just like are playing a kind of normal game of Lorcana and you each have 4 characters and some of theirs are ready, you slam this on the table, challenge down all their characters, gain 8 lore, wipe their board. Even if you lose 3 out of your 4 characters, they have a wiped board, you have 8 extra lore, and you have a character in play. This is like a win button that if you have like a very challenge focused deck, is just going to be awesome. So I really like this kind of effect. And exert all opposing characters. Like, we have not seen that very often, and it gets around ward. All right, second to last card, we have the Return of Hercules. 5-cost Inkable action. Each player may reveal a character card from their hand and play it for free. Both players are going to play a character for free, unless they don't have anything in their hand or no characters in their hand. So this is like show and tell from Magic the Gathering. Very, very powerful effect. You need to build the deck around it, so you have theoretically more big threats more often than your opponents do. But very cool card. Glad we have this kind of effect in Lorcana. It's going to help those other like big chonker characters that you're not going to play for legit very often, but super excited to see what's the craziest thing you can put into play, or the most lopsided thing you can put into play compared to your opponent with this card. And last but not least, we have Restoring Atlantis. 5-cost Uninkable action. Your characters can't be challenged until the start of your next turn. I think this is an aggressive deck win condition. You just sort of quest out on turn 5, play this. Your opponents can't challenge your stuff. They probably only have 5 ink. And they need to try to answer your board that is going to quest for a bunch your next turn or lose the game. So I like these sort of high impact actions that you have to play at the exact right time to get the maximum value out of them, and this is a pretty cool one, and the art is insane. All right, that is the 40 cards from Archazia's Island that I'm most excited about for Cube. I tried to sort of stick to concentrating like I would if I designed a 40 card deck. Is like most of the meat is going to be in the middle of the ink curve, with fewer up top on the curve and fewer at the 1-cost spot, because that's sort of where the most impactful cards in Lorcana are, in the middle of the game. Let me know what you think about this new format. I'm excited to do this every set. I think reviewing cards for Cube is a pretty interesting way of evaluating them, because you're not evaluating them just in their color pair. You're evaluating every card where every other card is legal and can be used alongside of it. So it's this is just why I love Cube, right? Is because you can sort of put the pieces together in different ways every time. Very excited about this new set. Dual Ink is going to be a game changer for Constructed, and very, very interesting in limited formats where we don't care about the ink restrictions. So we just take cards on pure power level. Anyway, let me know what you think of these cards, or if I missed any and you think I should talk about any other cards. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you next time. Bye.